Peter B. Collins.
Peter B. Collins, News and Comment. It's Wednesday, February 21st, 2018. And I've been cynical for a long time about the prospects of changing gun laws in the United States. But it appears the activist students, riddled with grief and deep anger from Parkland in Florida, may change the dynamics. Now, I've always believed that the impossible is not necessarily impossible, and that when it comes to social justice, political activism, we often must take on tasks and missions that appear just overwhelmingly impossible. And I guess there's a new generation of people who are touched by gun violence and don't carry the kind of cynicism that a guy like me does. Because I've seen people rise up and take on the NRA time and time again, and the gun nuts have virtually always prevailed. The one exception was when Dianne Feinstein got the assault weapons ban passed in the United States Senate about 1994. That was based on a brutal killing that included a man I knew, a lawyer I had negotiated across the table from. He was gunned down in cold blood by a guy with a semi-automatic weapon. And other than that, we haven't seen meaningful changes in the gun regulatory structure in this country, only rollbacks of limited gains that were achieved over time. So last evening, I went to a vigil so that I could pay my respects to those who died at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida last week. And the vigil was led by a member of the Grateful Dead, Phil Lesh. And Phil was openly weeping as he held up color photographs of each of the 17 people who were gunned down last week on Valentine's Day. And we're not alone here in Marin County, California. All across the country, people took the president's holiday to protest. There were protests at the White House, as you probably know, a lie-in. And Battle Creek, Michigan, Bakersfield, Toms River, New Jersey, Iowa City, all over South Florida. People are saying enough. In Bellingham, Washington, there was a potential school shooter averted when Grandma called the cops. And so on March 14th, a national event has been planned. That'll be the 1-month anniversary. Students and teachers plan to leave class for 17 minutes, 1 minute for each victim. On March 24th, students will protest in Washington, and an event organized by March for Our Lives, the group formed by Parkland survivors, and I know that George Clooney and his wife Amal have donated $500,000. Another mass walkout is scheduled for April 20th, when students will commemorate the 19th year since the Columbine high school shooting in 1999. So I am pleased to see this kind of momentum. And, of course, it draws out from under the woodwork the real nuts on the right, who believe that more guns are the answer because it suits their own fear-based mentality. And from Rush Limbaugh to commentators on television, we're seeing that these articulate students, and it's fair to say that the corporate media has given them a lot of airtime in the last few days. It's well-deserved. And yes, they have an agenda. And the agenda directly conflicts with the Republican leadership and their long-running love affair with the NRA. Some of those students have been written off as crisis actors, or they're tools who are being used by their parents and the media and liberals. Alex Jones says it's a false flag orchestrated by anti-gun groups. And I heard Rush Limbaugh this morning alternating between patronizing these now activated students. He had a little understanding. He said, yeah, they went through it. But, of course, they're only 17, and we know better than they do. And so then he shifted, of course, to attack mode, attacking the media and any liberal elected officials who speak up on these matters. There's a new angle here. Soros-linked organizers of Women's March selected anti-Trump kids to be face of Parkland tragedy. And I don't know if this comparison works for you, but I've seen these ridiculous Facebook posts and tweets that are attributed to the Russian meddlers in our election and bots and all that sort of stuff. And all they were trying to do was sow division. Well, that's what these people do on a regular basis. If you don't buy into their conservative line, you're an enemy. Limbaugh repeatedly talks about how he's the only man in America who truly understands liberals. Then he proceeds to offer these cartoon versions. Of course, he thinks Obama was a liberal. Anybody who's not a conservative is a liberal, and they are diseased people who just can't get it right. And that's a capital R, right. And one of the students, who's quite articulate, his name is David Hogg, H-O-G-G, he has been attacked because he went after Trump, had a very angry rant against him, and one of his critics called One America News, they pretend to be neutral. I have some right-wing friends who watch that and say, look, Peter, it's fair and balanced even more than Fox. Anyway, One America News posted this tweet. Could it be that this student is running cover for his dad, who works as an FBI agent at the Miami field office, which botched tracking down the man behind the Valentine Day massacre? Just wondering. And David Hogg, he didn't take it lying down. I think it's a testament to the sick immaturity and broken state of our government when these people feel the need to peddle conspiracy theories about people that were in a school shooting where 17 people died, and it just makes me sick. It's immature, rude, and inhuman for these people to destroy the people trying to prevent the death of the future of America because they won't. Touché. Another lame argument that is put out by the pro-gun lobby and their mouthpieces is that we need to harden our campuses, turn them into prisons. We need armed guards. We need armed teachers because good guys with a gun are the only antidote to bad guys with a gun. Well, there was an armed security guard at Parkland. There was a restraining order against Nicholas Cruz to stay off that campus. And a former school official, he was an assistant high school principal who survived a school shooting. This took place in Mississippi almost 20 years ago, but his name is Joel Myrick. And even though he saw a shooter, ran to his pickup truck, grabbed his own Colt .45 pistol, loaded it, and then chased and detained the suspect at gunpoint, he said it doesn't make sense to put more guns on school campuses. Teachers have to teach, and that's what they should be doing. And I agree. The idea that teachers should be packing guns and that they should have concealed carry permits really only creates the potential for more death and injury due to the unintended consequences when an angry student gets a hold of that gun. There are many scenarios that could play out. And because of the political cycle right now, Florida is ripe for some sort of political reform. The governor, Rick Scott, is termed out. He wants to run for the Senate against Bill Nelson. And these students stand in front of the cue ball, Rick Scott, and I can say that because I'm bald, and they could become a really potent force. Because, of course, the Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting claimed 47 lives, now 17 lives at Parkland. And there are a lot of people there who want some action. So it'll be interesting to see if this is the perfect storm where things can actually change. And Trump has decided, he put his finger up to the wind, that he needs to be ahead of some of these issues. And apparently he even consulted with Geraldo Rivera at Mar-a-Lago last weekend in Palm Beach. And Rivera suggested raising the minimum age. Trump doesn't support increasing the minimum wage. Let me say that again. Raising the minimum age at which a person could buy a semi-automatic weapon from 18 to 21. How about 25? How about 30? How about nobody gets to buy semi-automatics? Well, Trump is also making noises about improving the federal background check system. And these, again, are the tired fallback positions when Republicans are forced by shame and the course of events to do something. They try to come up with a form of appeasement for the activist body politic, and we'll see if it pacifies people this time like it has in the past. I know we have at least one listener in Holland, George Maschke, whose email I'm going to read in a bit here. But in the Netherlands, there is a comedy show, which is kind of like John Oliver's show. It's called Sunday with Lubach. And I'm going to play part of a video clip here, which is a spoof report on gun violence in the United States and what is called nonsensical rifle addiction. The leading letters stand for NRA.
Dear fellow Europeans, a devastating humanitarian crisis is threatening a small country on the coast of North America, the United States of America. 24,000 injured, 11,000 dead this year alone. Every day, 40 U.S. citizens die because of a terrible epidemic. Nonsensical rifle addiction. NRA is a constitutional disorder caused by a dysfunction of the prefrontal Second Amendment in the nonsensical cortex, causing patients to shoot people. It starts with an innocent colt, but soon patients will show signs of shotguns, sniper rifles, and M16s even. Often, patients use silencers to hide their condition. People who suffer from NRA have a big impact on their environment. Family, classmates, and random strangers struggle with fatigue, anxiety, and the feeling of getting shots in the face. NRAs.
So I've linked to the full video clip. It runs about 3 minutes and 15 seconds. And at your leisure, you can click on that and check it out for yourselves. The link is in the show file for this podcast at peterbcollins.com. And while you're on the website, maybe you want to take out a subscription to support my work. Those of you who listen regularly have a little cash in the bank and so far have not kicked in any bucks here. So come on over, peterbcollins.com. There's a menu button on the home page. You click on that, pull down, click on Become a Subscriber, takes you to the sign-up page, and in a couple of minutes you can be set up with a PayPal account for $5, $10, $20 a month, whatever fits your budget. You can make a one-time contribution of any amount via PayPal. Hey, and if you're allergic to PayPal, I understand. My P.O. Box is 150-660. That's Box 150660, San Rafael, California, 94915. One more time, Box 150-660, San Rafael, California, 94915. And my thanks today to Jerry in Southeast Portland, that's Oregon, Kevin Beckley, Pauline Nixon, and great people like Terry Paris. I lose track of just how many subscriptions Terry has right now. But I'm grateful to her and to all of you who kick in a few dollars every month to support the Peter B. Collins podcast. Well, Bob Mueller got another notch, another scalp. But once again, it does not further the notion that Russia hacked the DNC and used those methods to manipulate the outcome of the 2016 election. The latest guy to take a guilty plea is Alex van der Zwaan. He is a native of the Netherlands. He worked in London for the New York law firm Skadden Arps, and he helped write a deceptive memo trying to clear Viktor Yanukovych for the imprisonment of Yulia Timoshenko. one of his political opponents. And Manafort, of course, working for Yanukovych, got the law firm to write this report, and that none of that matters. That's not the focus of the guilty plea. It's because van der Zwaan apparently lied to Mueller's investigators when he was asked how recently he'd been in contact with Paul Manafort or Rick Gates, his partner in crime. So once again, we have another body stacked up, and Mueller can claim that he is, cleaning up the liars in Washington. But this really doesn't show anything to the underlying claims of the Russiagate narrative. Trump tweeted again today, attacking Obama. His tweet, question: if all of the Russian meddling took place during the Obama administration right up to January 20th, why aren't they the subject of the investigation? Why didn't Obama do something about the meddling? Why aren't Dem crimes under investigation? Ask Jeff Sessions. Now, this is just pissing all over the place, because once again he attacks his own attorney general. He tries to rally his fan base in order to put heat on Sessions, to put heat on Obama. And as you know, I think there are legitimate questions about what Obama knew, when he knew it, what he did about it. And hey, the Washington Post's Philip Bump rides to the rescue to defend Obama today. I've linked to his screed in the show file for the podcast. He basically just recites all of the unproven parts of the Trump-Russia narrative. He exaggerates the scale and the scope of the online activity and whatever impact it may have had. Talks about how this goes all the way back to 2014. And he basically says that, Obama couldn't really do anything because Mitch McConnell wouldn't support a bipartisan approach, and Obama was loath to be seen as hurting Trump and somehow helping Hillary by exposing the Russia meddling meme during the election campaign. And I don't think that makes much sense. And I don't think it exonerates Obama. And I've said all along that he could have declassified whatever information we needed to know before he left office on January 20th of 17, and he did not. So we'll see where those chips fall. Now, here's another really bad move by the Democrats, cementing their love affair with the FBI and the intelligence community in an effort to bring down Trump. Democratic leaders Pelosi and Schumer are asking for an additional $300 million to be tossed into the FBI budget for this fiscal year to fight foreign election interference. And exactly what phantom threats will they take on with the new $300 million? And I was shocked to learn the FBI already has a budget of nearly $9 billion. So I think this is a really bad idea. It's more grandstanding by Democrats to make it appear that they're tough on Russia and Trump isn't. And it's just ridiculous. Masha Gessen, my first reaction when she started writing about Russiagate, she's a Russian emigre, she hates Putin. I didn't give her much credibility. But at the New Yorker today, she has a strong piece, I've linked to it, and she says that the indictments returned last Friday by Robert Mueller have 4 ways of interpretation. The White House focused on the statement by Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, who said the indictment contains no allegation that any American knowingly colluded with the Russian effort. Trump tweeted they're laughing their asses off in Moscow. Facebook says that the purpose of Russian meddling was to divide America, not to influence the election. And Gessen writes, most of the legacy media interpreted the indictment as a major blow to Trump, who, they write, can no longer dismiss the allegations of Russian meddling as a hoax. And she says, all of this is true at the same time. It's true, she says. The indictment tells us nothing about connections between the Russian efforts and the Trump campaign. And she goes on to say that Americans really overstate what the Russian intentions were. She says it's hard to square words like sophisticated, frequently used by the New York Times to describe the Russian campaign, with posts like one from an apparently fake LGBT group promoting something called Buff Bernie. She says it's hard to apply the description bold covert effort used by Politico to the enormous amount of social network static that Russian trolls produced. And let me read her closer for you. Both sides have rushed to interpret Rosenstein's statements as offering certainty that the White House claiming that the Trump campaign has been exonerated, and the legacy media running with the story of a sophisticated, bold Russian plan to meddle in American elections. In fact, the plan was not all that sophisticated, and about as bold as, say, keying a neighbor's car under the cover of night. I sure agree with that. It is exceedingly unlikely, she says, that we will ever have a clear understanding of whether Russian meddling affected the outcome of the election. But a huge number of Americans already imagine that it did. And by doing so, they render the country all the more muddled, divided, and vulnerable. I think those are really cogent comments. I got some very strong and cogent comments from listeners reacting to Yasha Levine's interview, which we posted last Friday about his new book, Surveillance Valley. And I want to acknowledge that during the interview, we came to the subject of the Tor encryption system and its funding by arms of the U.S. government, and we kind of rushed through that. And it's an important part of the book. Levine goes into great detail about that. And I think he makes a strong case. But George Maschke, who listens in The Hague in Holland, writes, Dear Peter, Yasha Levine faults Edward Snowden for promoting the use of Tor and Signal, and you seem to concur with him on this. I think you are both mistaken. Levine's central critique against the Tor project and Signal is that they receive U.S. government funding. That's it. And this is not something Levine discovered through intrepid journalism. Both projects publicly document the funding they receive from U.S. government sources. Levine seems to infer that because they receive taxpayer funding, these programs must be backdoored for Big Brother. But Tor and Signal are open-source software projects. That means the source code is publicly available for anyone to review. Levine doesn't point to any actual backdoor in either project because no one has ever found one. And George goes on. Why do you trust Levine's judgment about the trustworthiness of Tor and Signal over Snowden's? Don't you suppose Snowden would have the better informed opinion on this question? If not, why not? Well, George, I'll admit my bias. I don't trust the government. And Levine has persuaded me that the funding of Tor makes it highly suspect as something that we can rely on 100% of the time. And as a result, even when I use WhatsApp for encrypted phone conversations or texting, I don't do anything that I wouldn't want my big brother at the NSA to be able to find, because I believe that ultimately we have no remaining privacy. And I could be wrong about this. That's why I appreciate getting smart comments from well-informed listeners. I have another missive here from John Zweibel in Hawaii, and he goes through a long rap here. He says, I worked on the Internet from 86 till 2010, and there was no built-in surveillance. What I said was, in a quote from Levine's book, that it was baked in, and that it goes back to the origins of the Internet and the development of computer networks. So that's what that is based on. And Zweibel goes on, point being, the Internet is just a way of sending data between systems and users. That the systems and users may have malevolent intent is something else entirely. And he says, one must separate the definition of the Internet from the things that the Internet is used for, or I believe you mislead people into believing something that just isn't true. All right, that's not my goal. I am not interested in misleading people into untruths. And the final comment was a link from our friend in Switzerland, Olivier de Merlot, who sent me a report from 1999 from an online tech site called Telepolis, how the NSA access was built into Windows. So that's a range of reaction to the Yasha Levine interview. And if you haven't listened yet, I hope you will. Yasha's got a lot to say, and what he uncovered about the real history of the Internet blew my socks off. In Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu is in trouble. one of his allies, and only one of his Likud coalition, called for his resignation today after more shoes have dropped. One of his top aides, a real confidant who ran covert operations, ran campaigns for Netanyahu, has flipped to become a government witness, and he can sing some songs that Netanyahu doesn't want to hear. Also, police have expanded their investigation into Bezeq, B-E-Z-E-Q, the telecommunications company, exploring whether Netanyahu got fawning coverage in exchange for sweetheart deals for the telecom unit. So it's getting tough. The person who called for his resignation is Oren Hazan, who is seen as a headline grabber, but often that leads other people to take the same position. The new state's witness is named Shlomo Filber, and Shlomo prefers Momo as his nickname. He was Director General of the Communications Ministry from 2015 till 17, answering directly to Netanyahu, who also held the portfolio of Communications Minister. I don't know quite how that works under the Israeli system, but they gave a lot of benefits to Bezeq. So Filber was arrested this week, along with other high-profile friends of confidants of Bibi, and the heat is definitely on. Yesterday, the report was about how another associate of Netanyahu's approached the judge who was presiding over the case of Sarah Netanyahu's corruption. And the report is that the judge was offered a promotion to become the attorney general or the top prosecutor, state prosecutor in Israel, and she turned it down. Her name is Judge Hila Gerstel. And kind of the way that Trump asked James Comey if he would just let the case against Mike Flynn go, apparently that was the quid pro, but it didn't get no quo. Because he is embattled, it appears that Netanyahu once again rashly overreacted. There was an incident last weekend where a Palestinian improvised explosive device went off and injured 2 Israeli soldiers. So in the typical disproportionate response, there were airstrikes on 6 targets, there was tank fire on an observation post, and a couple of Palestinians were wounded in retaliation. Now to the Trump family fun. Don Jr. is arriving in New Delhi today, I believe it's today, after an advertising campaign that said, "Trump has arrived, have you?" And he's promoting a new property there, luxury apartments in India. But the family is clearly exploiting not just the existing aura of the Trump name, whatever that was, but also the power dynamic. And this comes into sharp review when we see that Jared Kushner is being investigated by the special counsel on many fronts. But according to The Intercept, one is his desperate effort to refinance the bad deal he made to buy 666 Fifth Avenue in New York City. The building is severely underwater. They've got to refinance by the end of this year. So a year ago, Jared's dad, Charles Kushner, solicited funds from the nation of Qatar. And Qatar said, okay, we'll put in $500 million, but you got to get the rest elsewhere. And then when they didn't get others to kick in, the Qataris bailed. And the article in The Intercept links the coordinated crackdown on Qatar at the behest of Saudi Arabia after Trump went there and did the little orb dance and all that stuff. So this could be a really, really devastating issue for our Crown Prince, Jared Kushner. Because if they, in fact, mixed government business, government contacts with an effort to bail out the family business, well, that's a crime. And that could bring down Kushner. Now, he's already fighting because he hasn't been able to get his security clearance approved. He revised his application many times because, he forgot about this meeting, he forgot about that meeting, and golly, this is so hard to write all this stuff down. But John Kelly, the White House chief of staff, has been cracking down because after they bounced Rob Porter, the wife beater, they discovered that there are many people who have not completed the security clearance process, apparently including our Crown Prince Jared. So Kushner and his wife Ivanka alternate between attacking John Kelly or saying that they're his friend, but he's been unfair to them in return. According to the New York Times, Kushner and Ivanka spent the weekend at Mar-a-Lago surveying people about whether Trump should fire Kelly. So there's a lot brewing in the White House. And Jared, well, he's in the middle of a lot of it. We're pissed here in California. It's earthquake country. And again, the Trump administration, in its budget proposal, is trying to zero out the modest funding, $13 million for an earthquake alert system. Now, it's in the early stages of development. It's not a panacea. But I'd love to have 30 seconds warning right now if there's an earthquake coming 30 seconds from now, because I'll get under this Formica table and write it out. But otherwise, I won't know. And it's a piss-off that Mexico has an earthquake warning system that actually worked last Friday. They got 30 to 60 seconds of warning that the ground was about to move. So I guess California is going to have to get its own earthquake warning system, and we'll get Mexico to pay for it. Finally today, Billy Graham has died at the age of 99. I never liked Billy Graham. He was one of those sanctimonious, self-righteous Christian evangelists. He was one of the first. He didn't have a megachurch. He filled stadiums. He had a weekly TV show. He used many presidents. He was used by as many presidents. But he really made extreme evangelical Christianity mainstream in this country. And he wasn't as crazy as Pat Robertson. He wasn't as sinful as Jimmy Swaggart or Jim Baker. But I respect him no more than those frauds. Thanks for listening to my daily news and comment podcast. It's available on YouTube. And if you visit YouTube, click on that subscribe button. It won't cost you anything.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling.